Ting-Chun Liu. And on his side is Leon Etienne Kür. Both of them are researchers, media artists, and programmers. They both presented on last year's Free conference, so if they seem to be familiar, that's because they were here last year as well. Ting-Chun is a postgraduate of the Academy of Media Arts in Cologne, and so is Etienne. And Ting-Chun also is a researcher at the Bauhaus University in Weimar. The talk is titled Arafed Futures, an Artistic Dialogue on Chip Shortage and Artificial Intelligence Acceleration. They will explain to us how they will cover two aspects. One is the chip shortage and the other is the hallucination, both connected, of course, to artificial intelligence. And if the word arafed doesn't mean anything to you, well, keep listening. Please welcome them with a huge round of applause.
Chips like the one I have here, these chips, these wafers, are batteries, broadband, it's all infrastructure. This is infrastructure. So look, we need to build the infrastructure of today, not repair the one of yesterday.
Okay, so this was in 2021, and we didn't really know what it meant, so we just asked an AI what was just happening by taking this image and asking an AI describe what's happening. And we got the resulting text, a raft image of a man in a suit and a tie holding a mirror. And this talk is about the two words that make no sense in this sentence, which is on the one hand a raft, and on the other hand what this funny, shiny mirror is. So our talk will be about what does this word mean, where does it come from, and what this funny mirror is. So welcome to our talk, Arafed Futures, an artist dialogue on chip shortage and AI accelerationism. And maybe short about us, I mean, we were already introduced, so maybe we can skip over that. We are both media artists with a programming background and also researchers. I think the only important thing that was not mentioned is that we have an art background, so like our research methods are reading Twitter and Reddit or X and papers and hacking around, so pseudo-researchers at best.
So as an artist, we oftentimes think about how can we incorporate our working method with AI. And we want to start with 3 different images generated by different AI models, Midjourney, DALL-E, and Stable Diffusion. It's important to note that even though you're entering the same prompt, individual models always has its inherent aesthetic. You see different image has certain qualities, like DALL-E, it tend to have this kind of photolistic structure, and Midjourney are really good at making 3D model, which essentially says something about the model itself. It has already its inherent bias, but our goal is to understand more about that.
And when we started to do this, like we just did what we all did, we searched for some interfaces and we just typed stuff in, and then we got results like this one, and we were like, okay, like I get why it is like this maybe, but without opening this black box up, we might not really understand what's happening here. So like this is how we used to do AI, or how most of the people do AI here. So it's this weird black box thing, and we throw something in and then we get something out. And in the end we have many questions like why the salmon is the food and it's not the fish. And what we did over the last year was like opening this thing up, and wow, amazing animation, and seeing what's actually behind it. And while opening these black boxes up, like through code or papers or whatever, we saw that actually like this thing, like called Stable Diffusion, for example, here, is like not one model, it's like multiple models and so many different things, and they are all connected together in these weird, complicated ways. And these boxes themselves are also black boxes. And another thing we observed by like opening it up in our very trashy way was finding that they are all connected to each other. Like they all rely on the same models that were trained some years ago, and then they get an update, and then people use a model that's already trained, and they fine-tune it. And yeah, we showed this last year as well, just to point it out again, that, like, for example, some models, like this funny clip model there, is connected to like all the image AIs that we use today, like that are on this application layer. And we wanted to go from this application layer, mid-journey prompting, stable diffusion, DALL-E stuff, we wanted to get to clip and the models that are behind it and try to understand how. Yeah.
One of the interesting framework that we were thinking were actually founded by Margaret Mead, that we think about cybernetic, we think about how we could utilize feedback processes in order to sort of shine a light into the black box. Because inside the black box, there's always another black box, and then another black box, and then another black box, and then another black box. You will never get to the end of it. And it's itself somehow sort of a recursive structure. And it's not necessarily as a feedback loop, but more or less like a spiral that you just go all the way in. And we sort of slowly realized that this spiral has a lot of interesting attributes. Like if we try to incorporate this kind of recursive method into AI, you see somehow it shines a little bit interesting attributes to it.
Yeah, and so this is what we did last year. So we just took an image generation AI, we took the outputs, we put it back into the inputs, and then everything turned pink. And that was all the rage at the time. Everybody was writing about model collapse, like AIs learning from AIs, and we will all end up in the pink internet, or it will all converge or diverge into some future. And we continued that work by trying to understand what happens in these feedback loops. Like this, for example, is also from last year, where we took an image and we let it run through, and we try to visualize with a map, like where does the AI take this generation and what happens with it. But all of this would not be possible if we weren't using code. So this is not possible doing, you can do it with an interface, but it will take a long time to take 14,000 images and drag them from one AI to the other. So yeah, these 4 lines, like the first tops, you don't need them, are the only lines you need to generate an image right now, which is really crazy. So it's very abstracted and it's very short. And we started with this code to experiment on it. And one interesting thing that you see, that like, these are the 2 lines we are going to talk about, the only 2 lines for this whole talk. And the first one is this divide equals torch, CUDA something, and the other one is this pipelining thing. And these 2 lines represent something. So the red one is like hardware, like putting stuff on the graphics card, and the green one is the software, like actually the pipelining thing, this whole shenanigans that I showed you in the beginning.
So to begin to think about hardware, first of all, when we start by working with AI image, of course we try to use different methods. There was Midjourney, there was Automatic 111, there was DALL-E, there was also Comfy UI. All these stuff are sort of based on interface, where you just type simple prompt, and then these magical AI somehow make it work, and then you will get a response as an image. Or nowadays, you even had a response as a video, with Sora coming out. Sora was a model that was released this month, and you could simply put text, and then it creates amazing videos.
That's us.
Good. All right.
I guess.
But then something really interesting happens. The day Sora release was December 11, and as you can see there is this lines of red dot, which simply means the malfunction of OpenAI services. And some of you might, if you like live that day, then you will realize that, oh, ChatGPT doesn't work, these model doesn't work, all of them stopped their service. This kind of things already happened. In 2023, the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman tweeted that the ChatGPT service is off, they need to find more GPUs. But what does it have to do? Like, why does a cloud service not running? If we think about cloud computing, most of the time you see this kind of, you have this imagination of something happening somewhere, whereas you could simply do anything and some response will come back. But in reality, it's just one machine or multiple machines or trillions and trillions of machines that are producing heat running somewhere. Graphic cards itself has a lot to do with how we think about generative AI. If we have a graphic card, then it's also possible to perform all these computational processes. To think about graphic card as a way to represent AI is something that something that we were considering. Whereas if you put feedback structure into it, you also sort of make it to generate itself. Again, it's the feedback that we're looking for. So this sort of graphic card thing was essentially this code. If you have experienced coding with AI, you see this line, torch device, CUDA, if torch CUDA is available, else then CPU, which means that you're using something called CUDA. CUDA is sort of an API NVIDIA created, and it's possible to do parallel computing on graphic cards. And on the bottom, you will see NVIDIA A100, which is made by TSMC with its 7nm process in 2020. This single chip powers all of the servers in that 2 years. All of the stuff were trained by that. And it's quite fascinating to think about what the bottleneck of all these technology, that most of all these companies were trying to use the same device. It's a monopoly. But when we ask an AI to generate a GPU, it doesn't also have the concept of how to make it. It's so intricate and it involves so many different processes in order to see what's the mechanism behind it. And to view what a graphic card is, you have to trace back to all different levels of material. For instance, the ASML in Netherlands produced these EUV machine, which enables it to print chips. There is a lot of bottlenecks, as you can see there, and in the middle of it, it's TSMC, which is the Taiwanese company that actually manufactured the chips. Nowadays, nearly 90% of all the advanced chips were all manufactured in that single company. And to think about that, it's really crazy to see also some of the monopolies happening. NVIDIA is using Synopsys to do its EDA software to design their own chips. And at the same time, you have one single Japanese company that monopolizes 90% of wafer production.
This is a wafer.
The handful of huge customers it does have are furiously adding capacity to try to ease the global chip shortage, which is impacting ASML too.
We got a lot of messages from our suppliers that said, hey, we might be late in delivering our modules to you guys because we cannot get the chips. And we said, well, if we cannot get the chips, we cannot make the machines to make more chips. So there's a catch-22. Huh?
To think about that in order for this Dutch company to produce machines that produce chips, they need more chips to produce more chips. And again, this kind of failed recursive structure actually caused what we call chip shortage. So in 2021-22, there was a failed network that happened. Some of you might remember when you want to buy a PS5, when you want to buy a Raspberry Pi, when you want to play Animal Crossing. You can't really have that chip because of the chip shortage. And at the same time, it's not just about artists working with chips. A lot of company, I'm saying the word chips so much. A lot of company also has a lot to do with it. The car industry, all the electronic appliances were all kind of affected by it. And of course, as an artist, we have to kind of work with all these electronic products. And then we think a lot about how we use these structures and these technical artifacts. It ended up becoming something that we're wondering a lot. When we started working with AI, we were using NVIDIA 2080, and it works. But nowadays, these kind of same device doesn't really work anymore. You need to keep upgrading new machine. You need to keep upgrading new software. And to think about chip shortage, there is some kind of reasons that has to do with it. First of all, it was the Suez Canal blockage. It stops global trading network. It's a crazy image to still think about that. And at the same time, there was this pandemic where we start using a lot of digital infrastructure. And it changes how we interact with all these interface and machines. And at the same time, there was a drought in Taiwan where TSMC was located. It also resulted in the government has to restrict local farmer usage in water just to keep the production continuing. And last but not least, the calculation. That was the year when NFT had its boom, where all people were mining crypto, and also the AI boom was coming at the same year. And just to keep in mind that ChatGPT, for instance, has 200 million visitors a day, and it generates that much electricity.
And this is not only true for like cloud computing hardware, so like these A100s that we showed you, but also for like consumer hardware. So like most of the AI image that you see are also often produced offline by people in their homes, so they all have their own GPU. And so the surge in demand was not only in cloud computing, but also in consumer hardware.
So then it goes back to this image. In 2021, in April, Joe Biden holds a chip waving and saying that this is infrastructure. But what does it has to do with infrastructure? And is it only a US monopoly thing about infrastructure? It isn't. You start seeing this kind of images where figures holding this weird piece of metal and trying to explain to the public that they need to invest more into infrastructure, into AI, into electronic products. It's not only that, you also see more and more people start holding this piece of stuff. This is a chip, and one important key figure that sort of bloomed all these discussion was Chris Miller. He wrote this chip war book, and I'm just showing all these cover to give you an idea that individual countries also have individual idea of what a chip war is. And it's crazy to see how, just take some time, look at the image, and you can imagine that it has a different position in this complex global trade network. And I want to focus on one story in particular, which is the story in Taiwan. Whereas Chinese were putting fighter jets, at least in 2023, there was 1,700 fighter jets that fly through our airspace. At the year, the president coined the term silicon shield to think about how the production, this 90% production of advanced semiconductor, could perform as a shield to shield this kind of incoming aggression. And this is also somehow resulted in an acceleration. You see TSMC start building new companies, new factories to produce more and more advanced chips. And it escalates quite quickly, whereas the US starts doing embargo against China to stop them from having any chips that are lower than 7 nanometers. And this also blooms how Chinese try to self-produce chips. But things has gone into a weird turn when Trump got into Joe Rogan podcast. He said this, Taiwan, they stole our chip businesses. But at the same time, the Foreign Affairs Office in China says that at any time it will turn from a pawn into a discarded child. This kind of conflict was sort of in the center of it, and it makes this company accelerate more because they need to hold this technical advantage against these aggression. And then they start expanding. You might know the expansion to Arizona and also the one in Dresden, whereas car industry were heavily impacted during chip shortage. But this has a catch to it. At the same time, the US government forced TSMC to produce chips for F-33, the fighter jet. But this exact same fighter jet was used in Israel. And you see US Commerce Secretary talks about it's the danger of having these chips being produced in a country that are not US. Not only TSMC, but the monopoly also happens in NVIDIA. This is a video from NVIDIA. I don't want to play the music. There was a really bad music to it. I just want to show how much the acceleration effort they were doing to having more larger, stronger performance in order to have their margin and in order to get more capital to produce it. And nowadays, since NVIDIA is kind of being monopoly on these things, we also have to go back to the idea of CUDA. Most of the people think that NVIDIA being monopoly was because of the material structure and the support of TSMC. But at the same time, CUDA also plays an important role. Without this certain API, this is just video running. Without this certain API, you can't really have access to using NVIDIA graphic card. But this was already talked about.
A lot of chips into the Android market. and NVIDIA has been the single worst company we've ever dealt with. So NVIDIA, fuck you.
The following year in 2024, you see NVIDIA CEO went to Taiwan and then talked to all these sort of provider, this network structure that powers them up. And interestingly, he spent around 120 euro to pay them for this dinner, but it's not even enough to buy one single graphic card. So the really interesting point to think about this was that NVIDIA was a gaming company. It used to produce hardwares for gaming. And it makes possible for all these stupid, it was still interesting, war games to happen. But at the same time, the same exact GPU
We start with a military operator responsible for monitoring activity within Eastern Europe. They've just received an alert that military equipment is amassed in a field 30 kilometers from friendly forces. AIP leverages large language models to allow operators to quickly ask questions. Show me more details. They ask what enemy units are in the region and leverage AI to build out a likely unit formation. What enemy military unit is in the region? Our operator requests additional imagery to build a more complete picture of the potential enemy equipment on the ground.
So you start seeing this pattern, whereas large language models were not just used for image production and also ChatGPT. Language models were also used in military operation. This was the exact same graphic card that powers it. The image on the right side is a microscopic image of the NVIDIA 4090. This is quite interesting because I found this image in Chinese internet, whereas the embargo forced them to buy all these GPUs and start to research how to reverse engineer it. And to think about this, how we understand hardware and how artificial intelligence will power itself, this technical artifacts has a really strong political influence and its inherent politicalness. And what seems to be funny is that it also reflects back to how we interact with our society.
And that's why we want to talk now about the software part of AI. As Ting has already mentioned, these chips, almost exclusively by NVIDIA, are also in consumer products. So it's not only these A100 cards, these are mostly used for training models, but there's also like the consumer cards, mostly RTX, that you can use for gaming, but you can also use for generating images or text. So running large language models or running text-to-image models. And so let's go back to this picture and now try to better understand how these software supply lines, because they exist as well, how they work and how they caused a word to appear. That's the title of our talk. So how this started was that I was trying to find textual descriptions for 10,000 images that I generated. So I asked ChatGPT for a code and I just ran the code and didn't really look too much into it, and after like 10,000 iterations I had like 10,000 images and then 10,000 textual descriptions. And I was just scrolling through them and there was this word that was appearing over and over again, which was the word arafed. And I'm not a native English speaker, probably not all of you are native English speakers, so I just went to the Oxford Dictionary. English Dictionary was like, okay, yeah, my English is like a long time that I didn't take any classes, so I just looked for it and I didn't find anything. I was like, okay, that's weird, maybe it's some weird internet slang word, maybe I will just ask ChatGPT what it is. And so I went to ChatGPT and I typed in what does the word arafed mean, and there came out the word arafed does not appear to have a common term in English or is widely or in any widely recognized language, which is like, okay, well, that's weird, not even any other language. So I went to the Urban Dictionary, which is like the true dictionary of the internet, and I typed in arafed and I found like multiple ones. Problem is on the Urban Dictionary dictionary you find everything, but I found these different definitions, and one is, for example, to feel both safe and aroused at the same time, which is very interesting, and the other one was a small giraffe found near roads in Wales, which was also very interesting, because I went back to the images that were described as arafed, and I looked at it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, feel safe and aroused at the same time, maybe, but definitely not a small giraffe that you find in Wales. So the next logical thing is to Google it. I mean, yeah, you probably would have started like this, but would have been not as good as of a story. So I just typed it into Google and I opened up Google image search and I found like lots of images. And I mean, we are so used to it, but they look very artificial. They all look like an AI generated them, which made me a little paranoid. So I was like, okay, maybe that's Google. Google is weird. Let's go to DuckDuckGo, which has the same problem. It's different images, but they still look AI generated. So I went to Bing. Okay, that was more of a joke, but still there's like the same problem, AI generated images, but not really any explanation yet. So one of these images, I clicked on it because I was like, oh wait, that's an Amazon link. So I went on Amazon and I found a arafed bull, something that you can buy, that you can actually buy right now. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. What does this word mean? So I Googled it, searched a little bit more on Amazon. I found like multiple posters. They all look very familiar. And they all have like arafed in it. Arafed tree, arafed something, whatever. So I went on eBay next, and what did I find? I found like everything, like puzzles. I don't know what the English word is, where you put your ashes in after you die. But all of them also seem to be AI generated. They look very AI generated. So I looked at the sources of these images. I was like, okay, maybe it's just, I don't know, some bug somewhere. Maybe it's one site that, I don't know, has labels the images with a digital watermark. So I looked and I found it on lots of stock image sites, which is like really weird. Like the half of them I didn't even hear, but even on big stock image sites, I found images that were labeled with the word arafed, like Shutterstock and Adobe Stock, which are like maybe the Getty Images, maybe some of the biggest players in the stock image game. So I was like, okay, maybe Google search a little bit more, and then finally I found this website called Pirate Diffusion, and this is still the #1 search result. If you type in arafed now, you will find this page, and there's this explanation, and I'm like, what does arafed mean in Stable Diffusion? And there is a very confident answer to it. The word arafed appears to have multiple meanings in English, derived from its use both as an adjective and a verb. As an adjective, it means as leisurely, as blah, 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 and so on. And I was like, okay, but that sounds kind of like the Urban Dictionary thing. And this was the example given on the website. So a arafed man in a white robe riding on top of a blue car. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that has to do anything with the description that the person just gave. So I looked into this describe command. I was like, okay, it comes from this one command. Maybe it's this one command that just does arafed. I couldn't find it. It was gone. So I went to the Wayback Machine and I looked for this exact page, which is a page where you can generate images like Midjourney. And I found the description for what it does. And it just says describe command uses computer vision to take a best guess of what the image is, and then also a reference to arafed. So I was like, okay, computer vision. That's really weird. So I went on Reddit. That's the next thing that you should do if you search something. And yeah, there is a thread. What does arafed mean? Somebody asked, and then there's answers with upvotes. So arafed is a mixed hybrid word, like something punk. So it actually is like spoon-fed, but it's ara-fed. So ara, the bird. I mean, that kind of makes sense, maybe. But still, I couldn't see that in the images. I mean, you saw all the images. I don't see any ARA feeding anyone. So there was one explanation, and I think this was like. Then I was like, okay, I can stop being paranoid. It really is just a Middle Welsh term for something. I was like, okay, that sounds good. I will look at the link later. I went more on Reddit, and then I found somebody that was not looking for a ref, but this was looking for words to use while prompting. So you all know these quality salad words, like 4K, Ultra HD, that you add at the end of your prompt. And there was a person that was talking about a ref and saying something of how this happens sometimes with image captioning, but the most interesting thing is he or she says, adding it usually makes generated images look better, which is also very interesting. And other explanations, ARA, all have not many upvotes, very interesting. So I went on Wikidictionary and looked at what it would mean, and I actually found a ref, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's slow, leisurely, maybe. I mean, the Pope going in the car, not really, but whatever. Maybe it's this. So I found over another page a data set where it was where this word was contained. I was like, okay, this is the solution. I found the data. Here it is. There's this special data set. It contains images. These are not generated with AI. These are like computer-generated images. And it has some information about the face. And then in the end, it has like a caption, so a description. And there's the word arafed. And I was like, okay, solution found. There's this one data set that contains this weird Welsh word to describe these faces. But then again, I looked and I found something else. I found another data set that these has humans and their poses, and also the word arafed, but also the word araf with double F. And I did the same thing again, and I couldn't find anything. And I found even a third one, and this one, then I was like, okay, I have to look, maybe it's not Welsh. Because I found this one, which is like images, and then sketches of images, and there is the word araflane, and I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think this is Welsh, because this looks like plane, and somebody put araf in front of it. So I did the next best thing, which I went to Google Scholar, and I was like, somebody has to have written about this. This is weird. And I found a paper, but it was not describing arafed, it was using arafed in a description of an image. And I was like, okay, now the world has ended, model collapse is here. So I was like, I mean, maybe this is the only paper. No, I found another one, and I found another one, and I found another one, and yeah, there's more. There's also this one, and all of them, like in the papers, you can read them right now. They also, some of them have accepted to win. There is this word, nobody knows, like just as a description of something or whatever. So I looked at the commonality of all these papers. What do all these papers have in common? This has to be some weird connection in like how we use the AI software. So I looked at all of these, and I found in every paper that they said we use blip. And I was like, okay, blip, what is blip? And I looked it up. It's also a paper, and it's called Blip Bootstrapping Language Image Pre-Training for Unified Vision Language Understanding and Generation. And it's published by this company called Salesforce, which is a software company that has like a research department, and then from this research department they made this thing. And what this model does, it's an architecture for doing pre-training. So you pre-train it, and then you can fine-tune it on a task that you have. And it is about using images and text together. So it can do multiple things, for example, vision question answering. So you could give it an image and a text, what is the Pope riding, and then it will answer a blue car. But it can also do, one of the tasks it can do is image captioning. So you give it an image and it spits out a text. And in this, one second thing that's interesting about this paper is that they talk about this very new and novel approach. They write, when we trained our model, we realized that most of the internet images, their descriptions, they suck. Which is, I mean, makes sense, because they use the alt text, and nobody uses alt text, so it's not good. So what they did while training, they had this brilliant idea, while we train, why don't we generate synthetic captions? So in the same vein of training the model itself, we also train a thing called capfilter, a captioner and a filter, which will not only take the incoming data and the textual description, but also try to learn how to describe them themselves to have more data. So as an example down here, the green, the T label, the lower T label, T something, I can't read it, is the generated, and the on the top one is the original one. So like from my house, from bridge near my house is the one that the person probably tagged their image with, and a flock of birds flying over a lake at sunset is the one that the capfield came up with. And this is while training, so this was like also a revolutionary idea. Why don't we just make the data up while we are training it? Foreshadowing. So I went to Hugging Face, which is the site where you can find like models and code and whatever, and I just downloaded it. And there's like they released like 8 different models, but I used the one that has the most downloads. That's always what we use. And it has like 1.57 million downloads. It's called Blip Image Captioning Large. And there's also another one called Base. And I downloaded these 2 models, and I put in this image, and what did I get out? A raft image of a man. Okay, we already have that. But if I take the other model, there's no raft. So, I mean, if it is really like Welsh and it's a so defined term, it should also arise with the other model. I mean, it's the same company. The difference between Base and Large is just Base was trained with 30 million images or something, or 14 million, and the other one was with 129 million images. So I was like, okay, I have to find out what's happening here. So I did not only look at the output in a textual form, but in tokens. So I have to tell you something that you have been lied to the whole time, is that any AI understands English. They never understand English, they only understand like token language, some very specific token language, depending on the model. So what happens is you don't get out a text, but you get out these funny IDs here, which are called token IDs. And so what the model actually spits out is these numbers that you see. Do you see my mouse? No, you don't see my mouse. That you see in the second column. And every of these numbers stands for a series of characters. So I just looked at what does it spit out. So arafed actually is not one word or one token word. It's 3 token words. It's A, and then AF, and then ED. These hashtags, they come from the way these words are split in this particular model. It's word piece, which means these hashtags just mean there's a word before it. So, I mean, it makes sense. There's a difference between like A and then A and there's something before it, or something like this. Like ED, for example, could be the ending of a word like arafed, and that's why you have to do hashtags before it. So actually, it's like 3 tokens that it always spits out. And then I was like, okay, this is weird. Why don't I take the word arafed and I use the model to tokenize it? So I look at what the model would make out of it if I use it as an input. And the funny thing is, there's not the same thing coming out. So the same model, if I take the word arafed, it would not split it like it outputs it. It would split it differently, which is very, very weird. It would split it into ARA and then FED. So this is actually like something comes out that the model could never get as an input, which is also very weird. So I looked at the training data and I read through what it is, and the fine-tuning of this model for captioning, so for generating textual descriptions from images, uses Coco, which is a 2014 like dataset, super large, and I looked at what do these textual descriptions look like that are used for training. And I mean, maybe you can already guess. I mean, I highlighted it, but they have this very particular pattern to them that they always start with A and then something, and rarely you have like some other that start with this or whatever. So I looked again at, I was like, okay, but the people didn't use that model. They used Stable Diffusion, which uses Clip to tokenize also, the Clip tokenizer it's called. So I looked at, are these 2 models even speaking the same language? So the ones that generate images and the ones that do text from images, and they, I mean, the same language, token language. No, they don't. So if I put it into Clip, which is the model that's used in Stable Diffusion to tokenize the text, you would get AR, and then you would get AF, and then you would get ED, and then this funny character which just means end of word. So what I did next, I was like, I took 3,000 stock images and I just ran it through the model, and I was like, I looked for exactly the tokens that would always come out. So always like, I would start with this empty token, which is very interesting, then the A, and then the RAF, and I found 6 different words, or 7 different words, or even more, that, I mean, you can guess by yourself if this is Welsh or maybe something else, that always start with this exact structure. So I guess the model learned something. It learned that the resulting textual descriptions should start with an A. And probably, this is only probably, A has, if you have just the token A, it has a very high likelihood afterwards to have RAF after it. And then the rest, like, I mean, you get it, there's like arafly or arafective or arafature or full or the thing with the plane that I showed you. And I was like, okay, yeah, does it really make a difference now? So I put it into an image generator, and I mean, you can judge for yourself. I don't see a big difference, definitely not the giraffe thing that was mentioned. But while doing this, I was finding something else, and that was video. And I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah, this is weird. I went on YouTube and I found videos with arafed in it. I was like very, very, very confused. And it's lots of videos, and they all look like this, which I think you can guess probably what it is. But it's not only one channel, it's like multiple channels. They all have AI-generated videos. But what is very funny here is that arafed is not only at the beginning of the word. So probably the person that used something, a code to do this, they probably used like a ChatGPT or something to rewrite the prompt into something better, and so the word ended also up sometimes in the middle of the sentence and not only at the beginning. Yeah, videos like this. Sorry. And here even like arafed is used as some DJ name. I don't know. I can't really tell. But I mean, what you can tell is like this looks very AI generated. Even the music. That's why you had to suffer through these 5 seconds. It sounds very AI generated. So here's like the best guess. It's probably all bots. And there's like evidence for this, that it's mostly bots. It's also humans, you saw that in Reddit, but like the most of the sites you see that it's bot is on GitHub. You can just go on GitHub and you search for the word arafed and you find a multitude of repositories that try to remove the word arafed. There's like so many functions that people came up with because they don't know where it comes from. And so I went back to trying to understand like how did this spread? Like this is this one model that generates this word. Nobody knows what it means. Now people make up meanings in a very interesting way. So I went back to where I first found it. And this is Hugging Face. And Hugging Face is like the GitHub for AI code and models, you could say. And it's a multitude of things. They have like libraries for writing code. The thing in the beginning we showed you is that. And also it's a platform to have models and all the stuff. And it's kind of a monopoly. But I maybe let the CEO of Hugging Face explain that himself. Oh,
with him, which is why I asked the question.
Well, also, Microsoft published one and then quickly withdrew it from some of the reporting because they hadn't stress tested the large language model enough. They hadn't whittled out some of the toxicity checks in particular. Yeah. How are you feeling about the way in which large language models are growing and the way in which governance is developing around it?
Well, we're starting to see that the most important question is concentration of power. Right? For such an important technology, you don't want a world where just a few companies are controlling it.
But that is the world we live in.
I don't think so. I think more and more what we're seeing is that with open source, you can actually distribute power more. And you want to reduce the gap between the most powerful companies and the rest of the world. Not only other companies, but policymakers, non-profits, academia, and all of that. And that's the purpose of open source. It reduces the gap between the most powerful companies and the rest of the world. And that's what creates kind of like a sustainable, balanced future for AI and technology as a whole.
It's a conversation.
So very interesting here is that he said, like, he didn't say Hugging Face, he said like open source, but what he meant was his platform. So for people to come together, for policymakers, for developers, for people to have open source models, what he means is his platform. So the monopoly now is there already, which is just the Hugging Face platform and its libraries. So I went back and I tried to, and this is like my paranoia map of like trying to, this is my pitch, like you can still believe that arafed is like a Welsh, a small giraffe found at the side of a road in Wales, but also you can also, this is my alternative idea. So there was this paper called Blip, which was released, and they released one of their trained models, exactly one, the large one, and they released it to GitHub, and that was using lots of data for the pre-training, like millions of images with text and captions, and also for the fine-tuning, so for the captioning part, they used this Coco thing that I showed you that always starts with an A. From Hugging Face, on Hugging Face you can find demos, so you can find the public demos where you can put in images and it will calculate for you and give you the result, so not offline on your computer. The thing, if you type an image to text demo on Hugging Face, you get this demo, and this demo uses this model, so people found it there. And it also made its way into the Transformers library. And this is the most used, I would say, library for doing textual stuff with AI. I don't want to do advertisement here. And from that, it went into this website, Pirate Diffusion, that I showed you. It also went into ComfUI, which is these UIs for people to create images. It also went into Automatic 1111, which is another UI. And it went into various different applications and tools that you can find on GitHub. And it also went into the hands of people that use it for their bots to create clicks on YouTube. And so what people did is they used these tools and they tried to make money with it by, for example, publishing it on stock image sites. So like auto-generating images and also auto-generating a description for it. That's where Blip comes into play, and then it ends up on these stock image sites. And from these stock image sites, it comes then to the platforms. So it comes to Reddit or also eBay, Amazon, but also on YouTube. So it becomes content again, like after people have used it to describe the images. And I mean, yeah, you don't have to be like too conspiratorial, but I mean, we did it anyways. Yeah, I mean, you get the idea, like most of these data sets, especially like Lion, I mean, they come from this side. So there's kind of this interesting circle now, I mean, and hopefully this talk prevents that arafed could end up, I mean, it's already in data sets, it's already in papers, that could end up in these data sets again. And yeah, it becomes a word. So I think I thought long about what would I want arafed to mean, and I just realized we have this funny silicon stone here. So maybe arafed should mean like made by silicon or something like this, so we can at least like see that it is an AI generated. And I think that's it. You can find us at our lovely institutions, and please, if you have time, fill out this questionnaire if you ever had problems during the chip shortage crisis for our future work. Thanks.
Thank you. If you have questions, please queue up at the microphones. There are 6 of them in the hall. Question from the internet. I'm not seeing any. Okay. Giving everyone a bit of time. Yep, here we go. Microphone number 1, your question.
And maybe a side question, just because I saw it on your slide and I worked once in my life with NLP stuff myself. And I also ended up having this strange empty token, but always and only in the beginning of a string. Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. In the paper, in the Blip paper themselves, they write that they hit some special benchmark, like, oh, our model is so great. But to achieve this great captioning score, they had to add in the beginning an image of. And if they leave that out, the model, yeah, they probably saw that it generated a ref, but they didn't want to publish it. So they just say in the paper, yeah, you just have to prepend an image of, and then it will be fine. So my guess is that it learned that these 2 tokens just go together, and if you don't add there anything, it's just the empty token. So I think if you don't put anything in, your nothing will be tokenized, which is empty, and then afterwards the A comes there. But you never see it, so that's the interesting part. So that's why you have to look at the tokens. If you look at the text, you would never have gotten it. So I think it's actually your prompt for the model. Your prompt is just empty. So in the implementation, they just take empty string. And this is what empty string is. It's like 30,000 something, the ID. And then the most likely character afterwards is A. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very cool talk. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 3, your question.
So, as I work in semiconductor supply chain, very, very good talk. One question to, like, this covers more the Western world. As China is doing a lot of stuff on their own now with like their training models and things, did you also investigate like some of the, how do they do their like LLMs, difference between the things we see?
If you might, I think you might came across it. I think it was this week where China released a new LLM, which sort of benchmark-wise outperformed a lot of existing model, and they claim that they use the older version of graphic card, which in terms comes into a really funny discourse. Because when we think about acceleration in semiconductor, we oftentimes think about the scale getting smaller and smaller, like one single chip could pack more and more transistor. But what they did is that they just add quantities to it. They buy a ton of A100, which still kind of works, and they just still train on it. The embargo is getting stronger and stronger. For instance, one story I remember was that when I was talking to a local Taiwanese vendor, how they sell 4090, a lot of Chinese vendors nowadays go to different countries to acquire more and more 4090s. The official website in China is actually banned to buy graphic cards right now. I will get more into that, but it's also something that's really difficult, especially that the discourse and the weight of this openness is also a bit different. Most of the stuff are happening in one single company, how their chip manufacture were done, but they don't really spread a lot of news.
And there's also, on the software side, it's also that the CEO of Hugging Face himself said that most of the models right now, especially in the video, even the ones that are like the open ones, not Zora, but like the open source ones, that they come from China actually. So I think it's also that there's a trend towards efficiency. So smaller models that still do the same thing. So maybe it's not, that's also a niche that's happening right now, even if you don't have access to the highest and best graphics card, to build like smaller models or to build things that can run offline and also release them. So yeah, there's a huge portion of Chinese models also on Hugging Face.
Similar thing is what we had also discussed today is that a lot of Chinese CPU architecture is actually using RISC now. It's just because it's faster and it's also open source. They tend to contribute more in the open source community in the end because they only have access to that. And that's also some really interesting debate that we could also go a bit more into it.
Thank you. Single Andrew, you have a question from the net?
Yes, there's a question from the internet, at least 2 questions. Did you use an image-to-image model to produce the looping artworks? Did you see an empty system prompt?
No, that's arafed.
Okay,
please
explain the process.
Yeah, on arafed. So, yeah, that's what Zora thinks arafed is. I'm more with this than with the giraffe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And microphone number 4.
As you were describing the word arafed and how it was being distributed and reused and generated again, it reminds me it seems like it works like a virus or some memes, it's self-replicating in a way. Are we going to experience more and more empty concept artificially created like this?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, we were trying to, that's how we wanted to make the bridge between the hardware and software. You have these supply lines of software, and they also, they have bottlenecks. There's only Hugging Face, so people use Hugging Face, and there's the same phenomena. But concerning your question, for me, what arafed means is I feel like there's things like arafed that are invisible for us. So for our perception, maybe there's the word delve, for example, which is this common word that ChatGPT uses too much. And I think there's more of these emergent effects, maybe. But arafed is so interesting because we can see it. We can observe that this is happening, but the other biases, for example, of how it probably labeled something wrong or, not wrong, but it reproduces some bias, we don't see them. So we will only see it when it's too late and we already see it. All the nurses are female in these models. So we already see that kind of. And the arafed is this interesting thing because it comes out of the machine and we can observe it, but there's lots of things that come out of the machine that look for us because it gets translated to the English language, looks the same. So maybe we have to look more into the machine language, so looking into tokens, looking really if there's a difference maybe between what it puts out and also in images as well. So I think there's more like arafed, but invisible, not to stir any paranoia, but yeah.
Thank you. Single Angel, your other question, please.
No, that was the second question was how the process actually worked. So I think it was answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then microphone number 2.
Thank you. You are probably familiar with the concept of poison pill that is used to, render the data sets useless.
Yeah.
Feeding into your conspiracy theory, do you think there is any possibility that arafed could have been a poison pill?
Yeah. I don't think so. I also was okay, maybe in the beginning I was thinking this is digital watermarking. So, I mean, that would be weird digital watermarking, but I mean, everybody could see that you use blip model if you have this pre-penned thing, probably. But I looked at the interviews with the blip people. There's interviews online with the 2 main writers of this paper, and the way where they talk about it, they never mention arafed, but they say something to the lines, there's one sentence where they sometimes they say something like, the model, it was so fine-tuned on Coco that we now have a better version. So you can kind of hear out, I think they probably know, I mean, they have to know, but they just released Blip 2, and there it's no longer there. So I think they fixed the bug, and I think actually they're hiding it, not in a malicious way, but just by not mentioning it. But I don't think it's a watermarking technique because the same people made more models, so or a poisoning technique. But the well is poisoned. It's too late. Yeah.
Thank you. Microphone number 3.
Yes. Since I see you come from 2 different universities, my question is twofold. How did you two find each other, and how is your research received by your universities?
We studied at the same place before, so that's how we met. And how it is perceived. Our paranoia is questioned, and I think the rest people are we are in this in-between chairs because we come from art background. I also come from computer science, but we're always in between. So when we are here, we're playing the artists, and when we go to science thing, we say we are artists. Please don't look at our sources. So I think that's also how our peers, but you have to ask our peers, perceive us, but kind of in between, I would say.
One thing that was kind of interesting was that we were quite annoyed by the fact that working with AI image model oftentimes falls short into we just think that how this black box work. And it was this paranoia to open up more black box that ended up how we ended up here. I think we've done multiple different experiments just to see how it works, but at the same time it's kind of funny that how things develop, because when models change, a lot of different methods we also have to change. So we get more and more deeper into the core, like the foundations of things. Blip or clip, like these stuff are the foundation that will at least stay for a while to not change. And also the idea of semiconductor, the idea of graphic card, it's the same architecture that will stay for a little bit longer than Stable Diffusion, XL, Turbo, the new things, Flux. Like we think more in the sense of understanding how the thing works. And a lot of time it's based on our conversation about our paranoia and this stuff we find on Reddit.
Thank you. Microphone number 4, your question?
Hi. Hello. So first of all, the word cuda, when you read it in Polish, the same spelling means miracles, cuda. I think that's, like, since we're playing with words, I think interesting thing. But here's the question. You are in this position to define the word arafed, right? And this word, like, I'm pretty sure this is going to become an important word very soon because it's everywhere, and it's like your idea of this definition, I think, is wonderful. How does it feel to be in this position?
Like 1 year ago, I would be like, oh wow, I found a new word. I found the first AI-generated word. I mean, we could have called the talk this, the first word by AI, but I think it would be like dishonest, and it also would play into the hype. And we kind of want to show that it's not that, and it's actually more about, I don't know, monopolies and software and all this stuff. And I would say, I didn't find it, I would say. I mean, it was there. The Blip people found it first. They just didn't talk about it. So, I mean, I just took the stage. That's what I would say.
You get to define it, right? This weird word is everywhere, but doesn't mean anything yet. And you guys get to define it, basically, if you choose to, right? Which I think you did.
Yeah, maybe. I said non-word sometimes. I use the word non-word because it is a word, but it has no meaning, and this is new. So it can be used in a sentence. It is used in a sentence not by us, but by machines, and also by us. I mean, the people typed arafed. Some people really typed arafed, mostly bots. But some people also, they really think arafed means something. And this is, for me, the most interesting part. It's the other people that define it. It's not me, because I looked what it means, but it's the people on Reddit that actually say, if I type in arafed, it looks so much better. I think this is where it becomes interesting for me. So I don't even want to define it. I want to ask the people that actually use it in their prompts, because they really they define the word by using it. So maybe I will have to get back to you after I've talked to some of the people that really use it in their prompts. Yeah.
Okay, microphone number 6, your question.
Did you ever talk to the people from Blip about a word?
I thought about it. But I'm not sure. I have not, but I think I will. I think I will do a write-up that you can probably then find somewhere. I didn't put any website there, but anyways, you will find it. Type in arafed, and it will be the only. It will be the 7th paper about it. And I think afterwards, I want to talk to them. I don't know why, but I didn't want to blame anyone. That was kind of my idea. I mean, maybe I should have asked them before, but this should not be a talk about that they were negligent or something, because they say it multiple times. We just wanted to release, this is just an example model, but people just used it so much because it was available on this platform, and it kind of works for 90% of the cases, but for the 10% it spits out arafed. And they have other models as well, so I didn't really want to like to be too confrontational about it. So I think I will write this down, then I will send it to them, and maybe they can even have a better explanation about it, yeah.
It's also because it's not the only word. There's also a lot of words.
Araflane and what is the other one? Araful, yeah.
I guess that those were all the questions. Thanks a lot to Ting Chun, and thank you to Liu and Etienne.